Assemble Marbles 2 for Whoopsies Take 2. What's up, Saviors? GH here. Today we're gonna be looking at the Beastmaster build, which consists of Hunter, Falconer, and Appraiser. In this video, we will learn why this build exists and why people doing challenge mode is asking for Hunter Falconers. But as always, we're gonna approach this the only way I know. Show each classes, what they do, then the good and the bad, and then some closing remarks to finish up the video. And with that said, here is the loot buffer, the Beastmaster build. Let's do this. Okay, here's the build. We got the Hunter, Falconer, and Appraiser. We're gonna go straight to the point and start with Hunter. Now, Hunter is a class who hunts enemies using companions, and the reason this class is here is because of a few abilities that they can share to party members. And those abilities are as follows. First off is Hounding. It's a skill that detects hidden enemies and inflicts fear, but that's not the important stuff about this skill, because this skill also gives 1000 loot buffs. And that's the reason why people want this in challenge mode. And if you're using Hounding, you might as well look for a Savage Bow. Why? It's because Savage Bow gives +2 level to all Hunter skills. And if you add 2 levels in Hounding, the loot buff will be +1400. And that's a lot. And we're not done yet. Look for a Hounding gem, which is cheap and not rare, so don't buy it overpriced. And if you add Hounding gem on your Savage Bow, it will now add +3 level to Hounding, which in turn gives 1600 loot buff. That's a sweet loot buff. And if you add Oracle's Divine Might, which gives +1 level to all skills, Hounding will give +1800 loot buff. You can't deny that. Anyways, moving on. Next skill is Growling. This is an area debuff centered on your pet, which inflicts Immobilize. Here is an example. As you can see, some enemies ain't doing anything, which makes Growling an important skill to use on challenge mode. Next skill is Howling. This reduces enemy critical resist by 50% at level 10. And if you add Savage Bow, it will be level 12 and reduce crit resist of enemies by 60%. That's another pretty good debuff. Next skill is Praise. This teleports your pet near you and adds 30% damage to your hunter skills, like Coursing. This is a companion attack that reduces physical and magical defense of enemies. Then we have Retrieve. This is another companion attack that inflicts bleeding. And that's Hunter. In terms of challenge mode utility, this class is always a must on every optimized challenge mode parties. And now let's head on to Falconer. Now, Falconer is a class who hunts enemies using flying companions. And the reason this class is here is because of its utility skills that makes it easier for AoE DPS classes to make short work of hordes of enemies. And those skills are, first off, Aiming. Now, aiming is a skill that makes enemies' hitbox larger, making enemies easier to hit. This is mostly why people want Falconers in challenge mode. But of course, Falconers also have a myriad of skills that can be utilized to crowd control and attack enemies. We have Peasant, which is a very wide area attack that knocks down enemies, a pretty useful skill for stopping enemies from moving. Then we have Tomahawk, a fairly wide area attack that burns enemies. Next is Sonic Strike, a falcon attack that deals extra damage to beast-type enemies. Then of course, we have Preemptive Strike. This is a self-buff that consumes SP every 5 seconds. And what it does is automatically cast Peasant and Sonic Strike at regular intervals, and this is how frequent Preemptive Strike occurs. Okay, so that should be good enough. Lastly, we have Roost. This is a skill that resets most of your Falconer skills. So use this right after spamming all of your Falconer skills. Downside with this skill is your Falcon needs to do this resetting animation before the skills will be reset. Regardless, it's still a very useful skill. And that's Falconer, a well-balanced class for doing endgame content. And now for the last class, Appraiser. Now Appraiser is a class that specializes on buffs and debuffs that can help improve overall damage output of your teammates. And that's the reason it's here in this build. Now let's look at its skills. The first one is Overestimate. This is a party buff that gives +7 enhancement to the main weapon of your teammates. And of course your weapon as well. This is a very important skill to use. Use it at all times. Next skill is Devaluation. To keep it simple, this is a debuff that reduces the combat capabilities of enemies. It works differently in PvE and PvP. If you want more information on this skill, just check out the description and you should be good to go. And lastly, Blindside. Again, to keep it simple, this skill will make enemies susceptible to critical attacks. This is another good skill to open up with. And that's Appraiser. To be honest, I don't like it. But the main weapon enhancement sure is popular. And that's the build. A recommended build for new players looking for a CM party because it's a very useful class for challenge mode. And now let's do the good and the bad. Let's start with the bad. Obviously, this build suffers horribly on low DPS. And you might have difficulty on doing endgame story content if you're new. So only use this build when you're done with all of those. And that's mostly the bad. And now let's do the good stuff. First one is this build is great for boosting challenge mode parties and adding that sweet 1800 loot buff. Then of course, this build also is awesome for immobilizing enemies and knocking them down. All in all, if you're a new player looking to make money through challenge mode, this build is surely an awesome choice. But if you feel like playing also, you might want to change Appraiser to Fletcher or Musketeer or Matros to make it more fun. And that's why we play, right? And that's it guys. I hope this helps, and if you have any more questions, just write it on the comment section down below. And as always, like it if you like the video, share, and then subscribe to be part of the Gaming Hardcore family. And as always, this is Gaming Hardcore. See you in the next one.